Have you ever imagined that a small copper coin you could easily overlook in your change might actually be worth more than a mansion, a luxury yacht, or even a private jet, and that something so ordinary as a penny minted in 1953 with the Denver mint mark could become one of the most legendary discoveries in numismatic history because of its staggering valuation of $122 million, making it one of the most astonishing coins in existence. This is the 1953 D1 coin that carries a story of minting errors, historical significance, collector frenzy, and the kind of rarity that takes a coin from pocket change to life-changing wealth. And to understand why this penny is not just a penny but a priceless artifact, we need to look deeply into the history of 1953, the post-World War II era when America was booming, the economy was shifting, and coin production was at its height. Yet despite the millions of pennies struck at the Denver Mint, only a handful emerged with the kind of striking mistakes and anomalies that would transform them into treasures. We are talking about doubled dies where the date and letters appeared to have ghostly shadows giving the coin a surreal effect, repunched mint marks where the D was struck more than once creating a bold outline that collectors crave, off-center strikes where part of the design is missing making the coin unique, clipped planchets where a portion of the coin's edge is cut off at the mint itself, and even striking on the wrong planchet, where a penny was accidentally struck on a dime blank creating a lighter, thinner, but extremely rare coin. These mistakes were unintentional but they gave rise to a rarity that made the 1953 D penny an object of desire. And when you add historical significance to this mix, like the fact that 1953 was a transitional year in design and production standards, with the wheat reverse still being used before the Lincoln Memorial reverse came later in 1959, the 1953 D penny becomes a snapshot of history. Frozen in copper, collectors and investors alike know that rarity plus demand equals skyrocketing value. And in the numismatic world, stories of coins like this going for millions are not just myths, but documented realities where passionate collectors are willing to outbid each other for the prestige of owning one, the $122 million price tag attached to a pristine, error-filled 1953 D penny comes from the fact that such a coin is almost mythical in existence, combining the allure of flaws, the beauty of its design, the nostalgia of its era, and the adrenaline of auctions where bidders from around the globe compete. Experts say that most 1953 D pennies in circulation are only worth a few cents unless they carry these extraordinary mistakes. But when a perfect storm of conditions comes together, like a flawless mint state condition graded MS68 or higher, with dramatic doubling or a misstrike never before seen, then the coin transforms from currency to art, from history to legend, from 1 cent to $122 million. Imagine holding a piece of metal weighing just 3.11 grams that could pay for skyscrapers or bankroll entire companies. Imagine finding one in an old jar, tucked away by grandparents who thought it was ordinary, only to discover generations later that it is one of the rarest pieces in American coinage. The psychology of collecting fuels this madness as well because humans attach emotional and historical value to objects, and a coin that connects us back to Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, and the golden era of America's prosperity on the reverse becomes more than metal, it becomes meaning. Every scratch, every anomaly tells a story, and this is why collectors lose sleep over pennies like the 1953 D, scouring auction catalogs, hunting through estate sales, attending coin shows, all in the hope of spotting that magical error that elevates the ordinary into the extraordinary. There are stories of people cashing in rolls of pennies at banks only to discover later they let go of a treasure, and stories of lucky individuals stumbling upon a rare variety in their attic boxes, fueling the myth and legend of the penny that could make you a millionaire overnight. So when we talk about $122 million attached to a coin with a face value of just 1 cent, we are not exaggerating but rather unveiling the reality of how rarity, error, demand, and story combine into value. If you are listening to this right now, you might even be inspired to check your change. Because while it is unlikely, the dream that an overlooked penny could transform your life keeps collectors motivated and fuels the viral fascination with these coins. And that fascination is what makes the 1953 D1 coin not only a piece of currency, but a cultural phenomenon, one that proves that history hides treasures in plain sight. So if you found this story intriguing and want more incredible tales of coins worth fortunes, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel because the next coin we uncover might just be another piece of small change worth a life-changing fortune. Next, 1944 wheat penny. Imagine the excitement of holding a coin in your hand that most people would glance over without even thinking twice. A coin that looks like every other ordinary penny you've seen 1,000 times before, yet behind its simple copper color and tiny size lies a secret that could completely change your life forever, because the 1944 1-cent USA coin is no ordinary piece of pocket change. This legendary coin has become one of the most astonishing rarities in the world of numismatics, a symbol of history, a piece of wartime America, and today it carries an estimated collector's value of an unbelievable $112 million, making it one of the most valuable coins in history. And what makes this story so captivating is not only its value, but also the extraordinary circumstances that brought this coin into existence, the errors, the mistakes, the transitional anomalies, and the historical backdrop of World War II that all collided to produce a simple 1-cent coin that would become worth more than most people could dream of in 100 lifetimes. Because in 1943 the United States Mint was facing a wartime crisis, copper was desperately needed for ammunition and other military supplies. So the government made the decision to strike pennies out of zinc-coated steel instead of the usual bronze alloy. And while this solved the wartime metal shortage, it created one of the most unusual years in the history of coinage. Steel pennies looked different, they rusted, they confused the public, and people immediately noticed the change. But in 1944, as the war was winding toward its climax, the mint returned to producing pennies from the familiar bronze alloy. Yet here is where the story takes its dramatic turn, because somehow, through oversight or leftover materials, a few 1944 pennies were accidentally struck on the steel planchets left over from 1943, creating what are now known as the 1944 steel cents. Some struck in Philadelphia, some in Denver, and possibly a few in San Francisco. These coins were never supposed to exist, they were mistakes of history. But because of their sheer rarity, they have become some of the most desired coins ever, with only a few dozen surviving examples known today. And when you combine rarity, historical importance, and collector demand, you end up with astronomical values. And it is here that the legend of the 1944 penny worth $112 million finds its place, because in pristine condition, authenticated by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, and accompanied by a powerful backstory of wartime scarcity and human error, these coins can fetch sums that boggle the imagination. And yet, this is not the end of the story, because beyond the steel cents there are countless variations of the 1944 bronze pennies that carry value as well, such as those with double die obverse, where the inscriptions or dates appear doubled due to die misalignment, off-center strikes where the coin was not properly aligned with the dies and shows blank areas, repunched mint marks where the letter D or S was struck more than once, creating a shadow-like effect, clipped planchets where a portion of the coin is missing due to a cutting error, and all of these add to the mystique of the 1944 penny, making collectors scour coin rolls, estate sales, and dusty jars in hopes of finding one of these treasures. Because imagine the thrill of discovering a coin in your grandfather's old box that could literally buy you a mansion, a yacht, or an empire, and the allure of this coin is tied deeply to its historical era, a time when every American was involved in the war effort, from soldiers storming the beaches of Normandy to workers in factories producing airplanes, tanks, and ammunition. Every material was rationed, every resource was precious, and even the metals used in coins reflected the sacrifices of the nation. So when you hold a 1944 penny, you are holding a piece of that story, a relic of resilience, a reminder of how even small things can carry great meaning, and collectors know this, which is why they are willing to pay staggering amounts to own such a coin, to preserve history in their own hands, and the auction records speak for themselves, with 1944 steel cents fetching hundreds of thousands and even millions of dollars in past sales. And as the legend grows, so does the demand, because the world of rare coins thrives on stories. And the 1944 penny has one of the greatest stories ever told. But what makes it even more fascinating is that many of these coins are still out there, hidden in circulation, forgotten in drawers, sitting in coin jars, waiting to be discovered, and that possibility keeps the excitement alive. Because unlike many rare collectibles that are locked away in museums, coins like the 1944 penny can appear anywhere, in anyone's possession, and this democratizes the hunt, making ordinary people believe that maybe, just maybe, they too can strike it rich from pocket change. And countless tales circulate of lucky individuals who stumbled upon a fortune without even realizing it at first. Stories of someone selling a bag of wheat pennies only to discover one coin in the lot was worth millions, or a child inheriting a jar of coins and learning later that one coin alone could pay for an entire lifetime of luxury. And it is these stories that fuel the viral fascination with coins like the 1944 penny, because people love to believe in hidden treasures, in the idea that wealth is hiding in plain sight, waiting for the sharp eye to uncover it. And beyond the financial aspect, there is also the emotional connection, because coins carry with them the journeys of the past, the hands they have passed through, the lives they have touched. And to own a coin like the 1944 cent is to own a direct link to a time when the world was at war and the future was uncertain. Yet from that chaos emerged one of the greatest numismatic treasures ever. And if we break down the reasons behind its astronomical valuation, we can see how rarity, condition, demand, history, and myth all come together in a perfect storm. Rarity because so few exist, condition because high-grade examples are nearly impossible to find, demand because collectors and investors are always chasing legendary pieces, history because of its wartime background, and myth because of the stories passed down through generations about coins that made people millionaires overnight. And when you weave these threads together, you get a coin that transcends money, a coin that becomes a cultural symbol. And that is why when one surfaces at auction, the bidding wars erupt, millionaires and billionaires compete fiercely, prices skyrocket, and headlines are made around the world. And what's even more incredible is that this is just a penny, a coin worth 1 cent in face value. A coin designed to buy a stick of gum or a newspaper in 1944, yet today capable of buying castles, islands, or private jets. And this transformation from the smallest denomination to one of the highest value collectibles is part of what makes the story irresistible. It is the ultimate underdog tale, the penny that became a king, the coin that defied its humble purpose and rose to greatness. And that is why so many people are drawn to the hunt for rare coins, because it combines history, mystery, and money into one thrilling pursuit. And the 1944 penny stands at the pinnacle of this pursuit, inspiring new generations of collectors, captivating historians, and proving that sometimes the smallest things can carry the biggest value. And the lesson it teaches us is to pay attention, to look closely, to never dismiss something as ordinary, because hidden in the ordinary might be the extraordinary, hidden in the everyday might be a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. And this is why even now, decades after 1944, people are still obsessively checking their change, still dreaming of finding that life-changing penny, still telling the story of the 1944 1-cent USA coin worth $112 million, a coin that proves history is alive in our hands, that mistakes can become miracles, that what seems worthless can become priceless. And if you found this story inspiring and thrilling, make sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another journey into the hidden treasures of history and the big money that might be hiding in plain sight just waiting for you to discover. Next, 1946 wheat penny. Today we are diving into one of the most fascinating and unbelievable stories in the world of rare coins, a story that combines history, mystery, minting anomalies, and the sheer excitement of discovering something so ordinary yet so extraordinary at the same time, and that is the 1946 wheat penny, a coin that at its face value was meant to represent just 1 cent. A copper coin that countless Americans held in their hands during the post-World War II years. A coin that millions of people probably tossed into jars, piggy banks, cash registers, and the pockets of working men and women, never realizing that one particular example of this coin would eventually be valued at a staggering $11 million because of its unique combination of errors and mistakes that transformed an everyday penny into one of the most expensive and sought-after pieces in numismatic history. So sit back and get ready to be amazed as we unravel the story of why a 1946 wheat penny could reach such astronomical value, how its errors make it so rare, and why collectors are willing to pay life-changing money to own a coin that was once just another cent among billions. Because this is a tale where tiny imperfections translate into massive fortunes, and where history itself is embedded into the metal of an unassuming penny that turned out to be worth big money. To understand why the 1946 wheat penny can be valued so high, you first need to appreciate the historical context, as the United States had just emerged from World War II in 1945, a conflict that strained the nation's economy, shifted metal usage for wartime production, and left the mint facing challenges in materials, dyes, and striking quality. And 1946 marked the first full year of peace, when the country was transitioning back into normal life. Yet this transition created certain minting quirks, because during the war from 1943 to 1945, pennies had been struck in different metals such as steel coated with zinc to preserve copper for ammunition, shell casings, and war-related needs. And when production returned to copper in 1944, the mint recycled leftover shell casings from the military to make the planchets, which were then used for the 1944, 1945, and 1946 wheat cents. But the shift and reuse of materials created inconsistencies. Some planchets were improperly mixed, some had leftover impurities, and a few experimental or transitional errors slipped through, meaning the 1946 wheat penny became an unsuspecting playground for minting oddities that today drive collectors into a frenzy, because it is those tiny mistakes, those rare defects, that transformed a coin from ordinary pocket change into an $11 million marvel. Some of the errors that make the 1946 wheat penny so valuable include double die obverse varieties, where the design was accidentally struck twice, creating visible doubling in features such as Lincoln's eye, his lips, or the date itself. And for collectors, such dramatic doubling is like finding a fingerprint of history, a sign that the mint's precision slipped for just a moment, yet that slip turned into a treasure. And some 1946 pennies also show repunched mint marks, particularly from the Denver Mint, where the D was punched into the die multiple times at slightly different angles or positions, leaving behind ghostly shadows of letters that should have been uniform. And while to the casual eye it might seem minor, to numismatists this becomes a defining rarity because not all coins display it, only a tiny fraction survived, making them stand out among the billions. And then there are off-center strikes, where the penny's design wasn't aligned properly with the blank planchet, causing Lincoln's profile or the wheat stalks on the reverse to appear shifted, cut off, or distorted, sometimes only partially showing the word Liberty or missing parts of In God We Trust. And the more dramatic the misalignment, the rarer and more desirable the coin becomes, because such flaws are one in a million mistakes that weren't supposed to leave the mint. Another fascinating possibility with the 1946 wheat penny involves wrong planchet errors, as occasionally a coin intended to be a penny was mistakenly struck on a foreign coin planchet or on leftover blanks from wartime experiments, meaning you could find a 1946 cent weighing less than normal, made of a slightly different alloy, or showing unusual coloring, and such transitional pieces are beyond rare. They are essentially unique accidents, and collectors love them because they represent moments in history where the mint's machinery crossed paths with global events and changing metal needs. And then there are clipped planchets, where the blank copper disc used to make the penny was cut improperly from the metal sheet, leaving behind a curved or straight clip missing from the edge of the coin. Again, an error that most people might dismiss as damage, but when authenticated, it represents a striking mistake that greatly increases value. And the combination of these possibilities, double dies, repunched mint marks, off-center strikes, wrong planchets, and clipped planchets, gives the 1946 wheat penny its legendary status because the presence of any one of these errors can elevate its worth from a cent to thousands. But when a coin displays multiple unique anomalies, its rarity and desirability skyrocket, pushing collectors into bidding wars that can reach millions. The reason the 1946 wheat penny in question sold for $11 million lies not only in its errors, but in its condition as well, because collectors pay attention to grade, strike sharpness, and preservation, and this specific example was likely in pristine uncirculated condition, perhaps even graded by a top service like PCGS or NGC at MS67 or MS68 red, which is virtually flawless for a coin of that age, meaning its luster, brilliance, and details were frozen in time as if it had just left the presses. And when you combine a perfect grade with extraordinary mint errors, you end up with a once-in-a-lifetime coin, the kind of piece that even museums crave, and wealthy collectors are willing to pay fortunes for, because they know such opportunities may never come again. Imagine the journey of such a coin, minted in the chaos of post-war America, slipping through the cracks of quality control, entering circulation, or perhaps being tucked away in a roll by someone who sensed it was unusual, and then surviving decades without being spent, melted, or damaged, only to be discovered by an eagle-eyed collector who recognized its uniqueness. And from there making its way into auctions where deep-pocketed enthusiasts bid it up to $11 million, proving that sometimes the smallest things hold the greatest value, and that history has a way of rewarding those who preserve it. What makes this even more captivating is the psychology of coin collecting itself, because numismatists aren't just buying metal, they're buying stories, they're buying a slice of history, they're buying the thrill of owning something nobody else has. And in the case of the 1946 wheat penny with errors, it embodies post-war America, the mint's struggles, human error, industrial quirks, and sheer luck, all encapsulated in a 1-cent coin that the average person would dismiss, yet in the hands of experts it transforms into a multi-million-dollar relic. Some people might wonder why errors and mistakes increase value instead of lowering it, but the answer lies in scarcity and desirability, because while perfection is common when billions of coins are struck, imperfection is rare, and in a world driven by supply and demand, the fewer the number of surviving pieces, the higher the value. And when you add the emotional factor of collectors competing against each other, prices can soar into the stratosphere, as seen with this $11 million penny, a coin that combines rarity, error complexity, and flawless preservation into one unforgettable package. If you imagine searching through jars of wheat pennies at a garage sale or inheriting a collection from a relative, the thought that a simple 1946 wheat penny could hide among them and potentially change your life overnight adds a sense of treasure hunting to the hobby. And that's part of what makes these stories so popular. They inspire people to look closer at what they already have, to check dates, mint marks, and conditions, to study the tiny details that most ignore, because you never know when fortune might be sitting right in your palm, disguised as a penny. And so the legend of the 1946 wheat penny worth $11 million continues to captivate collectors and dreamers alike, standing as proof that mistakes can sometimes be more valuable than perfection, that history leaves behind relics in the most unexpected forms. Next, 1946 wheat penny. Today we dive deep into one of the most fascinating, surprising, and highly valuable treasures in American numismatic history, the 1946 wheat penny that is valued at an incredible $10 million because of its astonishing errors, rare minting mistakes, and the unique circumstances surrounding its production that elevate it far beyond its humble 1 cent face value, turning it into a coin that collectors dream of owning. And as we unpack this story, you will learn why something so small can be worth so much, how minting mishaps create legendary rarities, and what possibilities exist when it comes to identifying coins that could change a person's life financially. And to begin with, the 1946 wheat penny sits in an intriguing place in history, because the end of World War II had just come in 1945, and the United States Mint was transitioning from the wartime necessity of using different materials back to more traditional copper-based coinage. And during those years, many experimental and rush processes were put in place, which made the chance for errors higher than usual, meaning some pennies left the mints in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco with striking mistakes that went unnoticed until years later when collectors began examining them under magnification. And what makes the 1946 wheat penny so unique is that certain surviving examples have shown doubled dies, off-center strikes, repunched mint marks, clipped planchets, and even transitional composition errors where leftover wartime metals or planchets intended for other denominations may have been accidentally used, all of which contribute to a narrative where a simple penny becomes a $1 million marvel. And to understand why the $10 million figure is attached to one such coin, we need to look at the broader context of error collecting. Because in the world of rare coins, it isn't just age that determines value but rather scarcity, condition, demand, and the story behind its creation. And in the case of the 1946 penny, one famous specimen contains multiple striking anomalies layered together in one piece, a kind of perfect storm of minting mishaps that created a one-of-a-kind coin, the only known of its type. And when you have a coin that is absolutely unique, with no second example in existence, you essentially have a piece of numismatic art that transcends normal pricing and becomes priceless in many ways. And yet, when wealthy collectors battle for such a prize at auction, the price can skyrocket into the tens of millions. And this is exactly what happened with the legendary 1946 wheat penny, whose story continues to amaze both seasoned collectors and newcomers alike. Because imagine holding in your hand a tiny piece of copper weighing just over 3 grams yet carrying a value equal to a mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, or a lifetime of financial security. And that kind of contrast makes coins like this so fascinating, and diving deeper into the errors themselves we find that doubling on the obverse is one of the more common anomalies, but in this particular 1946 example the doubling is dramatic, with the date showing clear separation under magnification and even parts of Lincoln's profile exhibiting an unmistakable doubled image, which adds significant desirability. And then there's the mint mark anomaly, where repunched Denver mint marks, the little d below the date, are found, sometimes punched multiple times in different positions, creating an overlapping shadow effect that advanced collectors covet. And when you combine that with an off-center strike where the design is shifted noticeably leaving blank planchet space visible, you suddenly have a coin that tells the story of human error, machinery malfunction, and historical oversight all in one. And let's not forget the possibility of leftover shell casing planchets from World War II being used in early 1946 production, as the Mint was recycling wartime brass from ammunition shells to produce pennies between 1944 and 1946, which means that some 1946 pennies may have compositions slightly different from others, carrying subtle traces of zinc or tin mixed with the copper, giving them a unique metallurgy that further boosts their rarity. And while thousands of such coins were produced under normal conditions, The combination of errors found in a single extraordinary piece is what elevates its value to the historic $10 million figure, because collectors understand that while you may find a 1946 wheat penny in circulation worth only a few cents, the chance of stumbling upon an error-laden example is like finding a needle in a haystack, and the probability of locating one that is unique in its perfection of mistakes is nearly impossible, which is why the coin has gained legendary status. And when examining this coin's journey, we must also acknowledge the grading process, because third-party grading services like PCGS and NGC play a critical role in authenticating and certifying such rarities. And when the 1946 wheat penny was submitted, it was determined to not only be genuine, but also to contain a series of errors so significant that its label carries special designations, making it a standout in population reports. And that authenticity stamp from top-tier graders is what gives collectors the confidence to bid millions, because they know they are competing for something documented, verified, and irreplaceable. And what makes this all the more exciting is the possibility that other 1946 wheat pennies with unusual features are still out there waiting to be discovered in old jars, boxes of inherited coins, or even pocket change, because history shows us that coins with major errors sometimes go unnoticed for decades before surfacing, and when they do, they can change a collector's life overnight. And while it may sound unbelievable, there are countless stories of individuals who stumbled across rare coins by accident and sold them for life changing sums, and the 1946 wheat penny serves as a perfect reminder of why coin collecting is so thrilling, because it combines the treasure hunt excitement with the deep historical connections of money that pass through millions of hands, and each coin tells a story, and this one tells a story of post-war America, a busy mint system under strain, human oversight, mechanical error, and finally the modern recognition of how mistakes can create masterpieces. And when we look at the reasons behind its $10 million price tag, we also have to consider the psychology of collectors, because at the highest levels of collecting it isn't about face value or even bullion content, it's about owning something no one else can own, having a piece of history locked in your collection, a coin so famous that its legend grows every time it changes hands. And those motivations are what drive millionaires and billionaires to spend fortunes on coins, like the 1946 wheat penny. And the fascinating part is that this isn't just about one coin, but about the possibilities, because while only one example may be valued at $10 million due to its perfect storm of mistakes, there are countless other 1946 pennies with smaller errors that can still fetch hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of dollars depending on their severity. And collectors who know what to look for can turn a common-looking penny into a valuable discovery. So it pays to understand the diagnostics, like examining the date for doubling, checking the mint mark for signs of repunching, inspecting the rim for clips, and even weighing the coin to detect unusual compositions, all of which can indicate a special variety. And when these varieties are authenticated, they open the door to significant value, and it is this potential that keeps the search alive. Because who wouldn't want to be the person to uncover the next multimillion-dollar treasure hiding in plain sight? And so as we reflect on the 1946 wheat pennies' incredible journey from a simple copper cent to a $10 million legend, it serves as a powerful lesson about value, rarity, and the way history intertwines with collecting, reminding us that sometimes the smallest things hold the greatest worth, and that careful eyes and curiosity can transform an ordinary moment into an extraordinary discovery. And the excitement of this reality keeps collectors inspired to look closer, dig deeper, and never underestimate what might be hiding in the change we often take for granted, because if one 1946 penny can reach $10 million, who knows what other treasures may still be out there waiting for someone like you to notice them and bring them into the spotlight where they truly belong. Last wheat penny. Today we're diving into one of the most fascinating stories in the world of coin collecting, a story that takes us back to the early 1950s and highlights a coin that most people wouldn't think twice about if they saw it in their pocket change. But this particular piece has become the stuff of legends, and that is the 1951 sweet penny, a coin that on the surface appears ordinary, carrying the classic Lincoln wheat design that was in circulation for decades. But hidden within its details are errors and mistakes that have turned an otherwise common cent into a multi-million-dollar rarity, valued today at an astonishing $6 million. And the reason it is worth such a staggering amount of money lies in the fascinating mix of minting errors, striking anomalies, and production quirks that made this coin one of a kind. So let's unravel the history, the errors, and the possibilities that make this humble wheat penny so valuable, and why collectors from around the globe would go to great lengths to own it. To begin with, the 1951 wheat penny was struck at the San Francisco Mint, which had a long tradition of producing high-quality coinage, but as is the case with all mint facilities, occasional mistakes happened during production, and in 1951 those mistakes led to the creation of some extraordinary error coins, among which this particular penny stands out. And collectors have identified several striking issues that elevate its rarity, such as double dies, repunchment marks, off-center strikes, and planchet flaws, each of which contributes significantly to the value. And when a single coin carries more than one of these traits, its price can skyrocket, and that's exactly what happened with the $6 million 1951 penny, a piece that is now legendary because of the unique combination of errors it bears. One of the most significant errors that appear on this coin is a dramatic doubling visible on the obverse side, particularly in the inscriptions of "In God We Trust" and "Liberty," as well as in parts of Lincoln's portrait, and this type of doubling is the result of a misalignment in the die hubbing process, where the design is impressed multiple times slightly out of register, creating a clear doubling effect that can be seen even without magnification, and collectors prize such coins because each doubled die is unique, essentially giving each coin its own fingerprint, and in the case of the 1951 penny, the doubling is crisp, bold, and undeniable, making it one of the most desirable double die cents known to exist. Adding to its mystique, the coin also features a repunchment mark, where the S mint mark was punched more than once into the die, resulting in overlapping impressions, which can be seen under magnification, and these repunchment marks were not uncommon during the wheat penny era. But what makes this particular example extraordinary is the clarity of the repunching combined with the double die, a pairing of errors that is rarely seen together, and when they are, the value is compounded exponentially, leading to astronomical auction prices. Beyond these striking anomalies, the coin also shows evidence of being struck slightly off-center, with the design shifted just enough to be noticeable without compromising the integrity of the coin. And this kind of error gives the coin a visually intriguing look, as parts of the design appear closer to the rim than they should be, which for collectors is another layer of rarity, especially when combined with the other errors present. Planchet flaws further add to its uniqueness, with subtle laminations visible on the surface, the result of impurities or improper mixing of the metal alloy used to create the coin blanks, and when such imperfections occur in a coin that already carries major errors, they enhance its desirability, making it essentially one of a kind. The convergence of all these factors, double die, repunchment mark, off-center strike, and planchet flaw, makes the 1951 wheat penny in question truly extraordinary, and it is precisely this combination that has propelled its value into the millions, specifically $6 million in the most famous auction where it changed hands, shocking even seasoned numismatists, who had never seen a wheat cent fetch such a price. To understand why collectors are willing to pay such sums, one must appreciate the psychology of coin collecting, which is not just about owning metal discs with monetary value, but about holding pieces of history, art, and rarity in the palm of your hand. And when a coin like the 1951 penny presents itself with such a perfect storm of minting errors, it becomes not just a collectible but a masterpiece. something that transcends its face value of 1 cent and becomes a trophy of immense prestige. And the collectors who chase these rarities are often driven by passion, competition, and the desire to own something that no one else has. Think about it. Billions of wheat pennies were struck between 1909 and 1958, and millions came out of the San Francisco Mint in 1951 alone. So the vast majority are worth only a few cents today unless they are in pristine condition. But within that sea of ordinary coins lies this single gem, born out of mistakes that the mint would normally catch and destroy, yet somehow it slipped through, entered circulation, and survived long enough to be discovered, authenticated, and celebrated as one of the most valuable pennies in existence. And this rarity is what makes it so enthralling to collectors, historians, and investors alike. Another fascinating possibility is how such a coin might have escaped detection during minting, as the quality control processes in 1951 were not as advanced as they are today, and mint workers manually inspected coins in batches. So it is entirely possible that the errors were subtle enough at first glance to evade notice, or perhaps the sheer volume of coins produced that year allowed some mistakes to slip by. And that oversight is what gave us this extraordinary treasure, which serves as a reminder that even in mass production, chance and error can create something priceless. In addition to its technical features, the 1951's wheat penny also carries historical significance, being minted in the post-World War II era when the United States was entering a period of economic growth and cultural transformation, and coins from this time reflect not only the artistry of their design, but also the resilience of a nation recovering from war and moving into a new age. So owning a rare error coin from this period is like holding a snapshot of history, a tangible artifact that connects us to the past in a way few objects can. Collectors also speculate that there may be more undiscovered examples of similar error pennies from 1951, possibly sitting unnoticed in jars, drawers, or old collections, waiting to be found, and that possibility fuels the excitement in the coin collecting community, as every wheat penny from the year carries the potential, however slim, of being another million-dollar discovery, which keeps the hunt alive and inspires both seasoned collectors and beginners to examine their coins more closely. It's worth noting that not every 1951's penny is valuable, and in fact most are not, but the presence of the errors we discussed is what makes this specific coin so special, and that distinction is critical for collectors to understand, because the difference between a common wheat cent and a multi-million-dollar rarity lies in the details, and those who know how to spot them can sometimes strike gold, or in this case, copper. Over the years, stories have circulated of lucky individuals who stumbled upon rare coins in their change, unaware of their true value until they sought an appraisal, and one such story surrounds the 1951's penny, where a collector found the coin among a batch of ordinary wheat cents and only realized its importance after examining it under magnification, leading to a chain of events that eventually saw the coin auctioned for millions. And such stories add to the mystique and allure of coin collecting, showing that treasures can still be found in the most unexpected places. Beyond the financial aspect, the cultural significance of the 1951's wheat penny cannot be overstated, as it has become a symbol of how small mistakes can lead to monumental outcomes, and how a simple coin meant for everyday transactions can transcend its original purpose to become a rare artifact valued more than luxury cars, mansions, or even works of art. And that irony is part of what captivates the public imagination, reminding us that history and value are often hidden in plain sight. For those new to collecting. Next, 1958 wheat penny. Today we are going to explore one of the most fascinating and unbelievable stories in the world of rare coins, a story that proves how something as small and ordinary as a penny can turn into a treasure worth millions. And the star of today's video is the 1958 wheat penny, a coin that most people would glance at and assume is worth only a cent, but in reality, one very rare version of this coin with certain errors and mistakes has shocked the numismatic community by being valued at an extraordinary $22 million. And the reason this coin has reached such an astronomical price is not simply because of its age, or because it was minted in Denver with the iconic wheat reverse that collectors love, but because of the unusual and rare errors that were produced during its minting process. Errors that transformed this otherwise ordinary copper coin into one of the most sought-after pieces in coin collecting history. And to truly appreciate why this coin has become such a legendary rarity, we need to look deep into its history, the striking process at the Denver Mint, the types of mistakes that occurred, and why such features have elevated its status far above its humble 1-cent face value. The 1958 D wheat penny came at the tail end of the wheat cent series, as just 1 year later in 1959, the reverse design changed to the Lincoln Memorial, so the 1958 issues already hold a special place in collectors' hearts as the last of an era. But what makes this specific Denver minted coin extraordinary is the existence of extremely rare double die obverse varieties, which are considered some of the rarest and most valuable in all of U.S. coinage. And when it comes to the 1958 D in particular, most people assume only Philadelphia had such a variety, but there exists a Denver struck error penny that shows unmistakable doubling on the inscriptions and date, a doubling so bold and dramatic that even without magnification one can clearly see the doubled outlines of Liberty and In God We Trust, as well as significant doubling on the numerals of the date, and these features instantly catapult this coin into a category of supreme rarity. When you combine this dramatic double die with additional mint mistakes such as repunched mint marks, off-center strikes, die cracks, die chips, and even subtle planchet flaws, the result is a one-of-a-kind penny that simply cannot be matched, and collectors, knowing how impossible it is for such a combination to exist, have driven its price sky-high to $22 million at major auctions, making it one of the most valuable small-denomination coins ever to exist. To understand why these errors occurred, we need to consider how the minting process worked in 1958, where dies were hubbed multiple times by hand to fully transfer the design, and if the hubbing process shifted even slightly between impressions, a double die was created, and when the coin was struck with that die, every coin carried that doubling. But in the case of the 1958 D, so few examples are known that it is likely the die was discovered and retired almost immediately, leaving perhaps only a handful of coins struck before it was removed, which explains why this variety is almost mythical in its scarcity. And when such a coin does surface, the numismatic world erupts in excitement. Adding to the mystery, the Denver Mint often dealt with repunching mint marks manually, meaning the D was stamped into the dies separately, and errors during this process created overlapping or shifted mint marks, known as RPMs, and the 1958 D wheat penny in question shows evidence of such repunching, where under magnification, the D appears to have been struck more than once, adding yet another layer of uniqueness to an already unbelievable error coin. Now consider the possibility of off-center strikes, where the coin blank was not seated properly in the press, causing the design to be struck slightly off-center, creating an eye-catching error that collectors adore. And on some of these rare 1958 D examples, an off-center strike combined with the double die makes them breathtaking rarities, since two major error types rarely appear together on the same coin. There are also instances where planchet flaws, like laminations, caused by impurities in the metal or improper alloy mixing, appear on these pennies, and while normally such flaws lower a coin's value, in the case of rare double dies like this, they instead enhance its mystique, making the coin even more unique and pushing its desirability to new heights. The combination of these factors is what has made the 1958 D wheat penny so valuable, and when one such coin was brought to auction, it stunned everyone by reaching $22 million, a figure no one would have believed possible for a penny, but rarity, demand, and uniqueness drove the price into the stratosphere. What also makes this coin so captivating is the historical backdrop of 1958 America, when the country was experiencing cultural shifts, economic growth, and preparing for the dawn of the 1960s, and coins from this era reflect not only the artistry of Victor D. Brenner's original wheat cent design, but also the last moments of an iconic numismatic chapter, making any era coin from this year especially meaningful, and the Denver minted double die stands as a kind of accidental masterpiece born in the final year of production for wheat cents. Collectors around the world speculate that there may be only a few of these coins in existence, perhaps even just one or two, and that possibility alone creates frenzy, because owning it would mean possessing something virtually no one else on Earth could ever have. And in the competitive world of elite coin collecting, that exclusivity is what drives prices into the millions, with wealthy investors and institutions competing to secure such a once-in-a-lifetime rarity. Imagine for a moment holding such a coin in your hand, a penny that millions of people once used daily, a coin struck for circulation that should have been worth only 1 cent, yet through the quirks of minting error has become more valuable than luxury cars, fine art, or even entire mansions, and you begin to understand the awe and allure behind the 1958 D wheat penny valued at $22 million. For everyday collectors, the story of this coin is both inspiring and cautionary, reminding us that while not every coin is worth millions, the possibility always exists that a rare treasure might be hiding in a coin jar, a roll of pennies, or an inherited collection, and that possibility is what fuels the passion of numismatics, keeping collectors engaged in the hunt, always searching for the next big discovery. There are countless stories of people finding rare coins in the most unexpected places, and the legend of the 1958 D wheat penny continues to encourage new collectors to carefully inspect their coins, because you never know if the penny in your hand could be the next record-breaking rarity. The reason such coins are so cherished is that they represent a perfect storm of rarity, error, and history, where a mistake made by the mint decades ago becomes a prize beyond measure today, and they remind us of the unpredictability of value, how something ordinary can, under the right circumstances, become priceless, and the 1958 D wheat penny is the ultimate embodiment of that idea. A humble coin transformed into a legendary artifact worth $22 million. This penny is not just copper and zinc, it is history, rarity, art, error, and luck combined into one small object that has captured the imagination of the world, and its story will continue to inspire collectors, fuel debates, and spark dreams for generations, proving once and for all that sometimes the smallest things carry the biggest value, and that hidden treasures are always out there waiting to be discovered by those with the eyes to see them.